Thank you very much for joining. So what I am mostly jealous of the heroes of Ayn Rand novels is this ability they have to be so much deep into their work that they don't even notice the world around them. You read these scenes where Howard Rourke or Dagny, they work so hard that they even forget to eat. And to be honest with you, these are some scenes that quite often when I read them, I get slightly the idea, okay, that's a hyperbole. Because unfortunately, this is something that I've never managed to achieve. Any work that I have to do, I will do it, but work is almost never effortless. It's always a struggle for me, and it's always a situation where my mind is everywhere and it's not, I don't get into the zone, as they say. I sometimes get into the zone where I do public speaking, but that's basically it. The question is, can this be solved? Is this something that can be taught? Can you learn how to be in flow or how to be in the zone? And today I have a treat for you. We are joined by Josh Dickson. So Josh is the clinical director of Resurface UK, and he's a positive psychologist. Resurface UK has features in the media. It's these retreats that include surfing, but also include people understanding themselves in a better way and overcoming trauma. So Josh is, as I said, he's also a friend of objectivism, so he understands the relationship between how important productivity is, and he's with us today to discuss these topics. So Josh, thanks so much for being with us. Also, Josh will be with us, but when I say with us this time, I mean Ayn Rand Center UK members next weekend for the third meeting of the Productivity Hub. And it's going to be a workshop on finding flow. So consider today's episode as a teaser of the 2-hour plus workshop we're going to have entering into details next weekend. So Josh, thanks very much for being with us. So should I be in despair that I've never been in the zone, or is there hope for me?
There's a hope for everybody in terms of that. Anyone can find flow, and you probably have had a huge amount of flow as a child. If you look at children in play, what are they doing? They're basically engaged in accelerated learning, and that accelerated learning when they're playing is they're very fortunate up to the age of 25. Neuroplasticity, the changes in the brain that happen without, you don't need to put a huge amount of effort into it, just play and experiment and everything. But after 25, there's certain conditions, and there's some very interesting work on neuroplasticity over the age of 25 that I would point you to look at. Dr. Andrew Huberman's work at Stanford University, and he does some excellent free podcasts on these very subjects. But in terms of getting in the zone, everyone can get into the zone. There's a few prerequisites and a few things that you need to understand, and we'll be going into that in the Productivity Hub. There's a very specific flow cycle, and if you know and understand the flow cycle, then you can work with it. But there's some other things you need to understand as well, like you need to understand that there's a skills challenge balance, that to really get in the zone, you have to have enough focus, and you have to have certain specific goals, set goals that you're aware of, and you have to be pushed kind of to the edge of your limits. So yeah, and I use this example a lot, but if you and I were to play a Premiership football game, as good as football you might be, Nikos, we wouldn't get into flow because we don't have the skill set. We would be highly anxious, really embarrassed, and substituted after about 30 seconds. Just that's the thing. But if we were playing football with a bunch of 5-6-year-olds, it would be relaxing at best, probably a bit boring, frustrating. So you really need to be pushed. Those are just some of the things that we need to understand, and you also have to identify your top strengths. You have to, as I said, identify specific goals. Goals increase focus. You've got to have, and also, you were talking about the the heroes like Dagny and Howard Rourke and stuff, they would get into flow. Not all the time though. And for anyone to get into flow, you have to do a huge amount of what we call deliberate practice. So if you're a great pianist, all those scales that you've been practicing all the time, they all come into play. All the things that become automatized all happen kind of at once when you're in flow. So you have to have learned and automatized a huge amount of tasks and activities to be able to get into flow.
So let's start from the beginning for someone who, let's say, is not familiar with any of these terms. So you got someone who says, look, I want to do good work. I want to enter the zone, as I hear saying in basketball, someone scores a lot of 3 points, he's in the zone. It basically means he's almost doing this unconsciously. And if you hear people who use the term not in the same way we use it, they say, you're not your ego anymore. You're outside of yourself. So what does that mean?
It means you're so, in a way I see it, is you're so focused on the task that takes up all your bandwidth. And everything else that's happening within your conscious bandwidth is happening automatically. So so the sort of flow psychologists and others talk about losing a sense of the ego, but I'd actually say you're just in full focus, and so you're not noticing. And there are other things that happen when you're in flow, like a huge amount of endorphins are released, and when endorphins are released, they're painkillers, so you don't notice you don't notice that your legs hurt. You don't notice when you're really in the zone playing sport, for example. Those things are noticed because of the flood of the endorphins and the full focus. So some of those come into play. But the other thing that is really important to understand is that there are certain prerequisites that I wanted to share with you today. And I thought what I'd do is I'd share the screen.
Sure.
And then you can say like, you can either ask what they are or think, have I got enough of that in my life? Do I need to work on that? And so on. So I thought this would be a good precursor to the Productivity Hub as well, to maybe pique some people's interest, to maybe even join and become a member. So if I go to share screen.
But just let me say, even if you are not going to become a member, this is still going to be useful for you. And this is still going to be actionable advice that you can put to work quite soon.
No question. But if you see that, can you see that? And if I...
Yes, I can see. And now it's full screen. All good.
Yeah. So I'd say these are sort of main prerequisites for getting into the zone. So you have to have, number one, a growth mindset, not a fixed mindset. So you have to believe and know that you can change. You must have that you have a sense of agency. And this ties into our objectivist belief around free will, that we can focus our minds, and that we are beings of we are self-made beings.
Of self-made soul.
Yeah, exactly. We have a self-made soul, but we have a growth. Carol Dweck's work on mindset is, do you either have a fixed mindset or a growth mindset? Someone with a fixed mindset believes that they have just a certain set talents, genetics, and so on, and that's it. And really, it destroys self-esteem, a fixed mindset as well, because you're not really responsible for any of your achievements because it's just fixed, it's sort of determined. You can think of it in that way, a deterministic mindset.
So the first thing then, if I understand it with simple words, is the first thing to do is to tell yourself, no, it doesn't, I'm not that person who has never been into the zone. I can change this. I can become better in this in the same way I can become better in any other skill that I set my mind to it. Am I right?
Exactly right. And you can expand from that. Yeah,
good.
There's a lot of research that shows that people with a fixed mindset don't try on anything because they just believe either they're good at something or bad at something. They don't know, and they get incredibly shameful if they can't do things. Whereas someone with a growth mindset just learns from everything that they do.
Can I mention one more thing here?
Yeah, please do.
So it's what Ayn Rand also says in one of the essays. I don't remember which. It says, many people make the mistake to say, I'm good at this or bad at this, as if this is somehow given in a mystical way. And he says, no, the question is not, am I good or can I do it? The question is, how is it done? And once you reframe this to the question of how is this done, then you are in a completely different position on how to address this issue and become better. Go on, sorry.
And if you want to go into detail around mindset, look at Carol Dweck's work, but also look at Dr. Andrew Huberman's work on neuroplasticity, how we can learn how to rewire the brain in positive ways and so on. There's all sorts of things together. We haven't got time to go into everything in detail. But goal setting, we've got to have a good sense of goal setting. So you've got to know what are your goals and how are you going to get there. So what is it I need to be in the zone for? Because goals focus the mind, they focus your attention, they drive you forward. They're an essential part of motivation, and they're value driven as well. So you need to have a good sense of what your values are and how you're going to achieve your goals. And the sort of traditional SMART goals method is often a good place to start with goals. Are you aware of those, Nikos?
Yes, but I have a question here when it comes to goals. So in my life, I have a goal which is very far away. I want to buy a house in a Greek island by the sea. But to do this, I have to, be better at my job. So when we talk about goal, are we talking about my big goal in 10, 15, 20 years, or my goal this by the weekend, or my goal by the end of the year?
You should actually have what they call your massive transformative purpose goals, which is for you. I want to have my beautiful house on the Mediterranean in one of the islands. Then you should have yearly goals. Then you should have monthly goals. Then you should have weekly goals, and you should have daily goals, and then goals within the day should be like a to-do list, something like that. So it needs to be an integrated set of goals.
So here's the second piece of actionable advice for our audience. Think about what are your goals in the long term and try to break it down year, month, week, day. And I'm going to do that because the days that I'm time blocking, super productive. Time blocking means you assign specific times for a specific task. Days that I'm not time blocking, I am telling myself I'm working 8 hours. And at the end of the day, the work has been 2 emails and something completely non-meaningful.
Absolutely. And we can look at some of those kind of things in the productivity hub.
Sure.
Your goal settings. Remember also that you set specific goals in the way that I described earlier and you discussed then. Because of the crow as well, the crow comes into play. We can't hold all these different goals at the same time. So we need to break them down. And to-do lists are fantastic, I find, because again, it frees up the mind each time. Once you put your to-do list on paper, you don't have to think about hold all those different sort of micro goals at the same time. And that helps with things like cognitive drag and so on. So I really, goal setting is essential. And also remember, goal setting, the achievement of goals is what boosts your self-esteem. So that all of these things are interconnected. But
makes sense.
So I just advise people to look at this and sometimes think, oh, do you know what? My mindset's good, my goal setting's good, but I haven't really looked at these other things. Yeah.
So what are these other things?
Yeah, so here I've written positive psychology basics. Now, positive psychology is a huge subject, but what I mean in this context is, are you writing out a gratitude list every day? Are you boosting your positive emotion? Are you writing down Martin Seligman's classic 3 things that went well and why each day? Because what these things do is they point you in the direction of positivity. They produce more positive emotion. Positive emotion lowers your heart rate, allows for more creative and clearer thinking, and so on. Because we want to be able to have that to get in the zone. We need to be able to focus. Also within positive psychology basics, how good are your mindfulness and focusing skills?
My focusing skills are horrendous. So here's a question. Oh, by the way, 2 questions, sorry. And I'm going to interrupt because I have all these questions. And again, I want to make the best of this chance that I have to pick your brain on that. Yeah. So the gratitude thing, okay, from what you say, I understand that you do this, let's say, at night, then before you go to bed, but you want to enter the flow the next morning. So how are these two related?
How are they related?
Yes.
One is just, that's an excellent, okay, here's one way it's related, because there's many ways it's related. You want to be in flow in the morning.
Yes.
Yeah? So what do you need to do before the morning?
Know what you do when you wake up, have your clothes ready, all that stuff.
Yeah, but what do you need to do before you get up in the morning?
Sleep.
Sleep. So you need to have a really good sleep.
Yes.
So you need to set it up so that you have optimal sleep. And one way to set up optimal sleep is to write your gratitude before you go to bed. So you're going to sleep, you're going to sleep full of positive emotion and positive thinking, rather than the traditional anxiety thinking that most of the population has before they go to bed. So there's one reason why it's good, because sleep is one of the most essential aspects of resilience and flow.
Makes sense. And you also mentioned the ability to focus. So we live in times, and that's not an excuse, it's the reality, that most of us, including myself, we cannot focus for more than 10 minutes. We want to go to social media, see all that stuff. So, okay, I know the answer could take an hour, but very quickly, what's the hope for us who have trouble focusing?
Just download one of the mindfulness apps, maybe get Headspace, something like that, and just learn to start off very, very, like, I know that you understand working out.
Yes.
Yeah. If you're let's say that you had never done kettlebells before.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. You're not going to start swinging the kettlebell around in some kind of like advanced move, are you? You're going to listen to your teacher, hopefully, and learn how to incrementally get better and better and better at that, and get muscle memory. And the same thing, you need to do this with focusing skills. So maybe some gentle breathing meditations, because focusing requires being able to focus inwards and externally. Really, like mindfulness has introspective aspects where you're looking at your thinking and observing your thinking. You're interocepting, which is looking inwards at what your body sensations are. You're exterocepting, listening and focusing on the things outside of you. And then there's also proprioception, which is learning and feeling where you are within the space around you.
Right.
So being able to touch your nose is an element of proprioception, and these are all require focus training. So learning and building that up is really important. Like, I meditate in the mornings, I would say on average 4 times a week. I'd like to do it more, but it probably averages out about 4 times a week. And when I first started, I would do 5 minutes. Now I do 15 to 20 minutes, because you build yourself up to it. And
right. Okay. So So everything in a way follows from something else. So gratitude at night, good mood, you go to bed. Let's say in the morning part of your routine is meditation. Now you have more focus. So now you have more focus. You can enter the task at hand. You can attack the day, as Jocko Willink says. Yeah. And when you attack with focus, then you're in a better situation. Okay.
Yeah, you're in a much better situation, because we'll talk about this probably in the production hub, but there's a specific flow cycle, and all getting in the zone always requires what's called the struggle phase. There is always a struggle. And I talk about this when running and so on, it's difficult. The task at hand should be difficult, because if you want to get in the zone, you need to be pushed. So you need to have skills to not give up. And focusing and mindfulness skills really help working with the struggle, because when you're in struggle, you're pumped full of norepinephrine and noradrenaline. And a lot of people freak out when they're filled with that. But if you can learn to tolerate it, sit with it, focus on it, understand that that's what's happening, you can navigate your way through it much more easily.
So the next point is...
Go for it.
Sure. No, I'm just a bit conscious of time, so I'm moving to point 4. So optimist. How is this different from positive psychology basics?
Well, optimism is just in this term. Optimism is it's the way you think. It's a thinking style. So optimists really believe that they have agency, and pessimists don't believe they have agency. Optimists believe that they have control. Pessimists believe that they are helpless and that at the mercy of events. So and there's very specific ways of thinking. So Martin Seligman's learned optimism is incredibly helpful with this, and that comes from textbook CBT techniques that, again, we can go into in much more detail. But you have to have a sense of optimism. You have to believe that you have the control and skill to be able to get into the zone.
And I remember from a previous discussion with you, you mentioned a research that says that there's even research that says that optimists live longer. And of course, yeah, all this research needs to be taken with major pinches of salt. But there is something to it, because it's what you said about agency. By the way, apparently when the screen is shared, the audience cannot see both of us. But anyway, again, the importance here is the information. Not so. I get the optics today are not the usual episode, but this is gold for me. I mean, I'm looking forward already from tomorrow to start. And here's the thing, though, Josh. In theory, I've heard these things at some point in my life, but when you listen to them in this, as a continuum and how the one leads to the other, for me, that's the most revealing information, that all these things need to work. Integration is the term. Okay. We have a few minutes and we need to go to the three last points. So skills, challenge, balance.
Skills, challenge, balance, I already mentioned. You need to be tested. When I use the football analogy, our skills have to meet the challenge, and we have to be pushed right to the edge to get in the zone.
Right.
Anything less and we're relaxed, anything more and we give up. So that's character strengths. You need to identify your top character strengths and use them, because when we use our what we might call our character weaknesses or our lower strengths, what do you feel let's say that you're really bad at mathematics, and you are given some really challenging sums to do. What do you feel at the end? You tend to feel relieved that it's over.
Yes, like going to the dentist.
But when you do something that uses your top strengths and you do something really well, what do you tend to feel? You feel great and you want to do it again.
Yes.
So you need to utilize and identify your top strengths to get into the zone, and there's many ways of doing that. There's strength letters, inventory taking, certain specific tests online that can help you identify your top strengths if you're struggling to know what they are. And then the last one here is grit. Now, grit really comes out from Angela Duckworth's work, which is really, grit is a form of resilience, which is passion for long-term goals. Passion and effort towards long-term goals. And the emphasis in grit work is on effort. And Angela Duckworth has a nice analogy that effort counts twice as much as anything else you're doing. She'll say talent is important, but it's talent and effort that creates skill, and it's skill and effort that creates achievement. So effort is where we really need to teach kids and ourselves that the real change happens in the effort. Doesn't matter how talented you are. If you don't put the effort in, you're not going to get there. And that really, a gritty person cannot have a fixed mindset. Someone with a fixed mindset doesn't believe in effort. They either believe you can or can't do it.
Right.
So you see these things all are interlinked. But we have to have a good sense of grit.
And the grit thing, for me, the important thing is it also goes against this fashion. And if we're done, we can stop sharing the screen.
Do that. Yeah.
So the important thing with grit is it goes against this trend that says get abs with 4 minutes of workout for a week and all that stuff. So all this is a technique. All this is a system, an integrated system that can work quite well. but this doesn't take away the stuff that, as we say in Greece, you need to put your on the chair and work really hard. So think about it like basketball. You might have a good, or football, a good formation, good tactic and all the stuff, but it's not going to do the work for you. You have to run in the field. But on the other side, if you have someone, you can have a team with players who are super dedicated. They run around, but because there's no system, there's no integrated understanding of what are we doing on the pitch, they run up and down like ducks without a head, or what the chickens, or what the phrase is.
Yeah, there's no clear goals. So a team needs to have a clear goal. And that's really what the job of a coach is to instill and make sure everybody understands what the clear goals are.
Good.
And that they agree with those goals. Yeah.
So, Josh, I have to say, actually, I'll repeat something I mentioned in the past. So my most productive day of 2020, not of 2021, was one day after one of the talks you gave, and you talked about, I think it was time blocking or something like that. I still remember the next day, it was one of these days that you do so many, I did so many things. And then, of course, I forgot it and I was too lazy. Maybe next day, I'm not going to time block the whole day. I'll time block only the morning. And of course, the whole day went by like that. So I'm looking forward to trying to apply all these things to my day, maybe tomorrow. Actually, not maybe, actually tomorrow. And I'll start. I've never done the gratitude thing. I'm going to try it today. I also encourage the audience to try these things, or maybe the members, and then we can discuss in the WhatsApp groups how it went or how did it not go. So before we go to the outro, which is you telling us a bit more about what you do and where people can find you, let me do the outro in terms of what is in front of us. So I already mentioned the membership, and members know that tomorrow we meet to discuss one more lecture from Leonard Peikoff's course, Objective Communication. And actually, we are also having the productivity, the Art of Thinking. Objective Communication is the book, the Art of Thinking. But I'm also having the book on the side, so I got confused. Next weekend, not this weekend, next weekend is the third session of the Productivity Hub. First session, we discussed extreme ownership, and members got as a gift a very detailed notebook of almost 40 pages where I broke down every chapter, what are the main takeaways, and also how do we value them from an objectivist point of view. Second session was on public speaking. Third session next week with Josh. Also today, the Integrated Investor with Seth Levine, which is live on the channel in 90 minutes. This is a show on investing, and again, trying to see it from a point of view that integrates the ideas that we're passionate about. I'm sure there's more stuff going on that I'm forgetting. Are we going to Clubhouse after? I assume yes. Yes, says Razi, good. Okay, Josh, thanks so much. Tell us a bit more about the work you're doing and how people can follow it and how people can find you.
I think the best way of finding us is either go to Instagram and look up Resurface. It's actually, so we're called Resurface, but Resurface UK is the taglines. So check out Resurface UK on Instagram, Facebook, and we're also resurfaceuk.com. We do retreats for creativity, resilience and flow, trauma resolution. And also feel free to contact me if there's anything that you want any help with or questions about. When I say help, I mean like pointing in the direction of, I don't mean free sessions. And and yeah, please,
well,
I'm always happy for people to get in touch.
I feel guilty in a way because I get so much out of whenever you make an appearance in ARC UK, which counts for me like a free session. So yeah. No, your only chance.
We're scratching the surface here of so much that's out there. I mean, I think when we do the Productivity Hub, we'll be still scratching the surface of how much there is out there if people want it.
Good.
People want it.
Good.
It's there. Yeah.
So, and sorry I was interrupting you every now and then, but we're 10 minutes past. And as you said, we barely mentioned the titles. Imagine how deep we could go with all that stuff. Okay. Thanks, everyone. Another good week. I hope you have a great weekend, productive weekend, whatever that means for you. And let's move it to Clubhouse. Josh, thank you so much for being with us. Bye, everyone.